All right, welcome everyone. For those of you who've just joined, we've been sharing where we're joining from in the chat. Feel free to jump in. This session's going to be recorded, so we want to be respectful of your time. We'll just go ahead and jump in. And I think hopefully we'll get a few more people to join as well. But we're excited that you all are able to join us today. I'm Christina Hamlin. I'm SVP of Growth at Unit8, and I'll be your host today. We've had a really great response to this session, and that tells us that this topic is hitting a nerve. And we also know that from almost every organization we're speaking with has AI pilots running, and far fewer have AI in production. And so we're talking today about the gap between those two states. Before we dive in, I want to share a few quick logistics. As I mentioned, this is about a 60-minute session. We'll ask you to drop your questions into the chat as we go. We'll be monitoring it. We'll bring those questions up during the session. If there's enough questions, we can save some time at the end for a Q&A as well. And then, as I mentioned, the session is being recorded, so we'll definitely share the recording after the fact for anything that you either want to rewatch or if you have just some good tidbits that you want to catch up on. So we'll go ahead and dive in. So a quick word about me. I lead growth for Unit8 in North America, which means I spend a lot of my time talking with executives about AI strategy and what it actually means to move from their place of ambition to execution. And what I continue to hear is that the POC isn't the problem, it's how we get past it. So the person who helps us solve that problem in practice is my colleague, Rudolph. So Rudolph, I'll hand it over to you to introduce yourself and jump in.
Hi, thanks, Christina. Hi, everyone. My name is Rudolph. I've actually been quite a while at Unit8. It's been my 7th year, so I've seen some things that work, that doesn't work, and hopefully I'll be able to share some of a few things. At Unit8, I'm leading the Palantir practice, and really the goal today is to go through some of the learnings that we've seen. We'll go through kind of a live case study in a sense where through a demo of things that are happening on Foundry and AIP, we'll go over some of the features and way that you can architect some of your use cases to basically make sure that you don't stop at the POC, but you really show the business value that the platform kind of promises at the end. But before we dive into the core, I just want to quick words about Unit8, as not everyone might know who we are, what we do. So we're leading European and actually now American, so global company with almost 180 employees across 8 offices, with established in 2017, and helping a bunch of people. So trusted partner of Fortune 500 company. We've bring some experience on the table for anything related to data and AI. How you think strategically about the different use cases, the value it brings to the organization, how you structure the teams to really bringing engineering and data science horsepower in your teams to really push the project towards the end and put it in the hands of end users. Some of the things I want to mention is that we have a strong Palantir focus. So that's where the Palantir practice is coming from. And here we have dedicated services to that, where we have more than 70 Foundry and IP experts serving a large range of customers, across multiple industries. And here on the top right, you have a few of the impact that we delivered with our partners. So I don't like to say customers, but we're really building partnerships with the people that we work with to ensure at the end that we really deliver the impact that both Palantir promises, but also what we as Unit8, what we promise to our customers. Great. So let's quickly dive in. First, I just wanted to highlight a couple of data points and kind of why is it the topic today. But I think with those numbers here that you see, I think rethinking how we build and how we strategize about the AI POCs is a must to really show the business value. So like you hear CEOs saying about no financial returns, organization reporting no enterprise impact, or POCs never reaching production. So that's kind of daunting picture. Although I don't want to get or scare you. It just the data doesn't lie. I mean that's what we've been hearing. Also on the ground, those are like some public surveys, but that matches a bit sometimes what we see when we first start discussing with some of our partners. Here some from our experience 6 things that we think are I would say showstopper or killers to making sure that your POC doesn't stay a POC, but really reaches the production. And I think it starts with misunderstanding the problem. Like, are you really tackling the right issue, or are you just solving the wrong problem, but in a nice way? The second one, technology first mentality, thinking more about the technology rather than what is the technology for, rather than what is the technology itself. The third point, what we call the last mile problem, is that sometimes as engineers, and being an engineer myself, sometimes I can relate to that, is that we're thinking about building super nice and super cool models or pipelines, or super happy about the data set, but at the end, how do you connect this to the actual operational workflows? And that's this last mile or the last kilometer, if you're in Europe, and to make sure that like at the end of the day, you put it in the hands of the users, of the business people, and you don't just let it as a tech thing on its side, and people still download Excel spreadsheets to work on the data to spend maybe months polishing and figure out the right models. Data quality discovered too late is also something that can just affect the POC quality or like the work that you do. Business ownership, this is super important. Making sure that it's not only an IT pet project, but it's really that is business driven, in a sense that even if IT is in some organizations the people who are actually going to build the solution, it needs really to have a link with the business, and that the business kind of owns the basically the problem that they're trying to solve, right? Like, we're as engineers or data scientists, we're here to build, but the problem definition and designing the solution with the business, it doesn't work without the business. And lastly, thinking about success metrics, we'll touch upon a bit later in the discussion, but are you measuring only, I don't know, the recall or the accuracy of your model, or are you also measuring the impact and the actual time to escalation reduction, or OEE for you if you're in manufacturing, like overall efficiency gain of a specific use case? And I think at the end, at the bottom, what we found from BCG, I think it's like, I like a bit the sentence where they mentioned that AI success is 10% algorithms. That it's still there and it's still super important. Without this, at the end, it doesn't work. But like, it's like the cherry on top. 20% the data and tech, like the foundations, but 70% is the people in process. And like, you need to have the buy-in, you need to have the adoption, you need to have the impact. Otherwise, you're building things for no one to use, which is would be unfortunate, basically. So let's dive into how to actually build this on Foundry and AIP, right? So I was assuming that everyone knew what Palantir Foundry and AIP is, but now thinking about it, presenting it in a quick word, Palantir Foundry and AIP is like a product developed by Palantir Technologies, and you can think of it as a data and operational platform that have kind of security primitives, business first capabilities, AI first capabilities, that really is the glue of your business. There's kind of digital glue that really helps you to map all your abstract processes into a digital twin that will then, kind of make all those data insights, AI capabilities actually operational for your business teams. And that's, of course, the focus of this session today. So to actually, instead of talking through slides for an hour, we thought that actually going through kind of a more interactive checklist of what are the things that you need to kind of tackle or to think about before actually kicking off a POC here with looking at a manufacturing company. Of course, there's no disclaimer anywhere, but everything is national data. I want to make sure that I'm mentioning it. I'm not sharing, any confidential data. But here are some of the questions that you want to have on top of your mind before you even kick off the first sprint, to make sure that you have the right business ownership, the right metrics. I mean, we'll go over all of them, but basically here the story is that we have this Orkova manufacturing company. So they're building, you can think of it, automotive or aerospace components. They pretty traditional company, and what they built recently 8 months ago or 6 months ago is a supplier risk scoring model. And you can imagine that it's something that ran on a Python notebook. The output is a CSV that is emailed to the procurement team every Monday. And they're reviewing it by copy pasting the score they get by email into another spreadsheet, and then they take decisions on this that is not tracked anywhere or anything like that. And what happens if the data scientist leaves the company? Often what happens that nobody can really reproduce the pipeline. Often something that could even run on someone's laptop. You could have the model drifting silently, the score become mini glass in a sense, but nobody really notices it. Imagine the model drifting for 8 weeks undetected. What kind of impact it can have for the procurement team. And at the end, they still receive those emails every Monday morning, but the scores are wrong. Right. And I don't know if it relates to some of you, but that's something that Excel sheets, copy pasting, emails, that's the kind of thing that we often see kind of in real, and that shows a bit here what's the problem. So what am I going to show instead is how we approach this from a production system. So it's the same use case, supplier risk scoring and disruption response, but more built with the production thinking from day one. And so it's not about having a better algorithm, it's just a better design to make sure that it scales and it ends up in production. So here, what you have here is basically like eight questions to answer before the POC start. So let's start with the first one: decision define. Is the what operational design is being changed? And we're not thinking about what, can we score the suppliers? And that's a capability, and I'm sure a lot of people can do that. But the question is, or the decision is, should a procurement manager escalate this supplier relationship right now? And that's a slightly different question, and it changes a bit, basically everything about how you build. And so in the POC, instead of answering, can we score the suppliers, and the score is living in a CSV, nobody really asks, who acts on this? What kind of action do they take? What does acting on it looks like? And that's basically the first question that you ask. And here I wanted to show basically what like the ontology in here looks like. So the ontology is really this digital twin of your process, right? So every object in the ontology exists because there is a decision that needs to happen, right? Someone needs to take a decision. Here, there is a disruption alert. It exists because somebody needs to decide: do we escalate this or not? If I deep dive into that, we have set up action types. They exist because there is actually a decision needs to happen that we need then to write back to a system of record, not a spreadsheet. So here, if I click on approve risk mitigation, here this action type that you see here, that's how you'd call the production contract. So the model can change, the pipeline can change, maybe the UI can change, but this contract that defines who can act on what with what parameters. So you have the parameters here, with what audit trail. This is designed from day one, right? And this is your all your decisions. So that's the first one. Is the decision defined? Then the second one is who owns this whenever it goes live. In the POC that we talked about, like it wasn't unclear. Like, the data scientist owns, of course, the notebook. He or kind of they implemented it, but if they leave, the system becomes kind of an orphan. Nobody is really accountable for the scores. Nobody sees if it's drifting, and the procurement team is still using that because it's coming in their mailbox, right, in their email. And so here in the system ownership, it's not a conversation that you want to have at month 5. It's something that you want to have from day 1, and it's something that you can really encode in the platform. So this can be very, very easy, right? So here, that's my project. You have the point of contact. Here it's me because it's our Unit 8 instance, but you can imagine that this could be the procurement manager, who's kind of the one knowing what at risk mean. We're talking about supplier risk management. So what does really at risk means in business terms, right? So she's the one, or the procurement team are the ones that signed off on escalation thresholds. They're the ones that are, you can define the KPIs, and it's not really the data team or the IT team, right? But if you look at the access, you have the engineers. Of course, there are people who implement the procurement SME, the business owner. I mentioned this one, and then the platform owner is the one that is like making sure that everything runs on the platform. Here, something important is that there is no AI governance that is kind of kept towards the end. It's something that someone asks from legal who has access to those data. Basically, it's bolted in the platform. Something that I also wanted to show here is about markings. But if I show marking and I have access to the marking, basically you don't see that I have access to the marking. And if I don't have access to the marking, then we don't see anything. So, but marking is also a feature that allow you to have all the audit trail and all the capabilities to make sure that people from legal, people from security, they you kind of reassure them, and you define somewhere who has access to what. So at the end, all the AI capabilities that you have sees basically what the user sees, and not anything more. And I think that's super important. Cool. So we know who's the owner. Now about the success metrics. So are success metrics tied to the business outcomes and not the model metrics? Right. So before, I told you that the model accuracy of the POC, they ran, it was 84%. Great. Everyone celebrated. But nobody asked really the question, is the procurement team making better decisions? Is time to escalation shorter? Are we catching disruptions earlier? And basically in the system that we're building, the KPI is the average time from disruption alert to escalation decision. And we measure that in workshop, through actions, through everything that is basically logged in the platform. And it's not something that kind of lives in a notebook or, people ask, after 8 months running in to run a report or anything. But before we kind of even deep dive into those, even we define those metric sets, the question is the data audited? And this is also somewhere where some of the POCs can kind of die silently. And here, what is important is that basically you can define something that we call data expectations. So here you have one example where we enrich suppliers data set, and it's called bad example because we purposely for the demo put some wrong data. But here we're not really talking about schemas or is my name a string. We're really looking at the business understanding of the data. So for example, here the risk score is failing. Why? We expect the risk score to be less than 1, because as we define the model, the risk score is something that needs to be between 0 and 1, right? The supplier, so here we have a value of 1.45. So what happens is that the pipeline stops. Like you have something wrong in the data, so the pipeline stops. The ontology never receives bad data. And that's not something that we wrote like kind of a test that we defined at the end of the POC or at the end of the pipeline. It's something that it's in the pipeline because those are the data quality questions that we asked from day one, right? And if we look at simple data lineage, that shows how your data flows from your raw systems to your ontology to then your workshop application. You can then also look at the health, like things look green, or my bad example is failing, and maybe it relates to you, like you have someone from compliance asks where this risk score came from, and it's not something that you have to go through and investigate. That's something that kind of is like one click away. It lives in your lineage because the lineage is here no matter what. Cool. The fifth question, governance design. Is like, do you have the right governance in place? And I think this is the one that can also kill the POCs at the finish line. So you can imagine 6 months of work, the model is ready, the UI is built, and then you have IT security comes and say, actually, who has access to the supply financial data? What happens when an AI makes a wrong recommendation? Who's accountable? Can we audit every decision the system influenced? And the answer is that yes, we'll. I mean, if you hadn't thought about it from the beginning, then you have to kind of rebuild your whole thing. But in here, everything is recorded from day one. So I can jump through here. So that's one of our disruption alert that we closed. And because we have all the edit history, you can see that Rudolph, or that's me, but it can be the procurement manager. They resolved the issue. The nodes are here. So everything, you have the timestamp, everything is here, everything is recorded. You can review that afterwards, and not only it links to also you remember the security team asked, has the AI influenced this decision? yes, how, then basically you have your AIP logic function, and here you have all your, all the runs, all the calls, basically all the history of who called when this function. And when you click on one, you have the exact, output. You have the whole log, the trace, like everything happens. So like anyone asks any question on how even just a specific decision in time was taken, then everything is accessible and transparent for you, as long as you you set up the things correctly. But things are there ready to be used. We're past half. We're now you're asking, he's showing us many different things. What did we actually build at the end, right? And so the sixth question is like, how do we integrate this workflow now, right? So that's the one that separates dashboards, like read-only dashboard, from systems, meaning is the AI output embedded in the workflow that people actually use. Remember, in the PoC, the CSV emailed on Mondays, copy pasted by Friday, it's irrelevant. Everything is like just spreadsheet, and this is the what we call the Excel problem. And at the end of the day, it kills like a lot of potentially good projects. Here, what we have instead, every morning, not just Monday, every morning, the procurement team opens this, which is their comment center. It's not a dashboard, it's really their operational workflows. That's not an email, it's not a spreadsheet. You have the important numbers. So we have 4 active alerts, out of which 2 are critical. You have all the at risk, all the value. You have also some KPIs about what's the average resolution time, when was the last data refreshed on the top right. And so that's their operational workbench. That's where they take decisions. That's where they work. So you have the active alerts here at the left. When you click on one, that's the detail of a specific alert. Here that is linked to a specific supplier. You have severity, the risk score. You have the recommended action that is here for you. And then you have the purchase orders that are linked to the supplier and to this alert. And here, what's really important is that it's not something that you have some information in one spreadsheet or one system, and then to find those purchase orders, you need to log in another system, because you mapped everything that the process needs into the ontology. You really created this digital twin. By design, you know what information people need to make the actual end decisions. And here there are 2 decisions that we defined. Either you approve the recommended action, or you override and escalate to management. And that's why you pull all this information and you make that available for the business. So on top of that, you have the AI analysis that is bolted on directly within the system. And because we want to make sure that it's as easy for the users to understand, how did actually we know it's an AIP logic function, but maybe the business users, they don't know or they don't care, like how this AI came to this. And basically you have here at the bottom what we call the chain of thought. And like this is something that allows you to really deep dive into, what was the supplier, what context did we actually build, which prompt did we use, what was the output. And you have really all the details of how the AI came to its conclusion, like how, which action to take, what's the confidence, do we need to escalate? Yes, there is a SLA breach exposure, and here you approve the recommended action, you submit, and you this alert is now marked resolved. The recommended action you saw earlier is logged. The supply status is dated. The manager gets maybe notification, but there's no no email bouncing around. There's no spreadsheet. There's no morning CSV. And this is what I said earlier. The last mile from making the model. I think I can submit here. It doesn't matter. Make the model, build, and create the rescoring, and making it available and actionable for decision making for the business. And here we can look at the resolved alert, and here we have our critical alert with all the tracking that just like 4 p.m. my time. I just did it here. Everything is logged, everything is tracked, and importantly, transparent and accessible for the business. Great. So we know now how to integrate this workflow. The couple last points: how is the monitoring plan, and is the handover defined? Meaning, who's gonna, how the system is gonna survive the long term, right? And here, basically, there are a couple of things that that we can do. So I'll just kind of skip over a few things. The health checks, we can here, like, you have the job status of the disruption alert backing data set. Everything is green, but what happens when something is failing? Well, you can have a monitoring view. What happens within this monitoring view? Well, you have here, of course, everything looks healthy, but you have subscriptions. So either Foundry notification or email, or you can set up even a pager that people are on call 24/7 to make sure that everything is resolved, everything is fixed. From the continuity, the developers, they rotate, they leave. Here, for any, here we're looking at AIP logic, you have all the version history. That's super important to know, what was built when. You have the evaluation set. So here in the most recent, everything passed, no fail, but you can imagine that with time, things can drift, and it's important to make sure that you have the capabilities that are in place to make sure that you catch those. And when you look at an evaluation set, you have the history of the KPIs of things, of how is your AIP logic performing, number of tokens, really a lot of things, and how is the evaluation suite created. Here you have all the code, everything, all the metrics that are being checked, the different results, everything that is that you need to make sure that the system in the long term survives the time, I would say. So monitoring.
Rudolph, really quickly, I think on this, I'm just curious, as you're going through all of these items on the checklist, seems like there's some of these that are easier to answer than others. And I think every organization's obviously different, but what advice do you have for the group to ask better questions, or feel like they're truly thinking through each of these items, they feel confident checking that box?
Yeah. Great. Yeah. So I think the approach here is really to build a process around this. So people get familiar with how to work with those kind of checklists, and it's an organizational push. It's not like one person that needs to just change how they work. That's really as the organization, as between the IT teams, the data teams, the business teams, how they work together, how they can make sure that things they don't stop at the POC and they really go to the finish line. And so here, I think if we go back here, because we finished the checklist, we show how things were implemented. I think when you think about the framework, one important thing is if everyone is accountable, then nobody is accountable. So that I think the first step, that's why I started also with ownership before, is who are the owners, who's owning this business decision. And I think here what's important is to really start with the operational part of things, like which decision is being changed rather than which model is being built, so that we really focus on the decision and not the technology. Here is a recap of the checklist that we've, this one is for you to kind of to bring home, but that's what we've discussed earlier, and went through each one of those. Sorry. One additional thing that I want to mention here is that I think leaders, senior leaders in the organization, they also have their role to play, and they can also be the one to drive this cultural adoption. Can be simple things like asking, "Hey, have you asked the AI tool in every meeting?" Or have you looked at the data? Or, "Hey, have you talked with," if it's business stakeholder, "have you talked with data or the IT?" Or if it's IT, "have you talked to business?" I think here the leaders need to also be role models in this change and in this mindset. So that's good. Tomorrow starts. Tomorrow begins. What's your first move? Like what do you do tomorrow morning? Whatever time it might be for you at home. What do you do, right? So I think I just wanted to take a bit some time to connect the dots from everything that we talked and everything that we mentioned. So first of all, the platform is not the bottleneck. Here we saw that the ontology, the glue, the digital twin is the enabler, and kind of by default everything on Foundry and AIP, is available. It's just for us to adopt as developers, engineers, and to help the business go through how production systems looks like. The second is the operationalizing AI beats the AI capability. So rather than focusing on deploying very smart model, I think the question is how will people use this model? That's why I think this question is super important. And I would say the classic, the last one, start with the business problem, not the technology. I think that this one is like super important. If you remember at the beginning, we mentioned that out of every 33 AI POCs, only 4 make it to production. Let's change those stats together. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Rudolph. Really appreciate you taking the time to walk through this. We have a little bit of time left over. I will open it up to any questions that anybody has. And if there is nothing left, then we will wrap up early and give everyone some time back in their day. We'll wait maybe 30 seconds, see if anything else comes in through the chat. Otherwise, what we'll do is wrap this up. We will make sure that everyone has access to the recording, and we will get that sent over as soon as possible. But thank you all for your time. Oh, I see someone is typing. Oh, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate the time. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, everyone.